Ma'am, turn around and put your hands behind your back. What? Why? I haven't done anything. You match the description of a suspect. You're under arrest. Match what description? I'm just standing here waiting for my daughter. I said turn around. Now. Officer, I'm Dr. Nicole Harper. I'm a cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial. I live 2 blocks from here. You're making a mistake. I don't care who you say you are. You fit the description. Hands behind your back. What description? Can you tell me what crime you think I committed? This is my neighborhood. You're resisting arrest. Turn around now or I will use force. I'm not resisting. I'm asking for an explanation. What suspect? What description? That's it. You're going down. Officer Kevin Rawlings had been with the Chicago Police Department for 9 years when he made an arrest that would destroy his career and cost the city $13,800,000. He was 37 years old, experienced enough to know that reasonable suspicion requires specific articulable facts beyond race and gender. Old enough to understand that arresting someone based on vague descriptions without verification has consequences, but apparently convinced that his instinct about who looked suspicious was sufficient legal justification. One Thursday evening outside Lincoln Park Elementary School in one of Chicago's most affluent neighborhoods, he received a dispatch call about a suspected car thief described only as a black female wearing dark clothing. He saw a black woman in dark clothing standing on the sidewalk and decided that was enough. The woman was Dr. Nicole Harper, a 42-year-old interventional cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, one of the leading cardiovascular specialists in Illinois, waiting outside her daughter's school for dismissal. What Rawlings did next, arresting a renowned physician in front of dozens of parents and children without asking a single identifying question, using a takedown maneuver that resulted in injuries requiring medical treatment, and charging her with resisting arrest when she asked for an explanation, would become evidence of how racial profiling turns police work into assault when officers see race instead of individuals. A black woman in her early 40s, Dr. Nicole Harper, was standing on the sidewalk outside Lincoln Park Elementary School at 3:47 on a Thursday afternoon. Her hospital identification badge hung on a lanyard around her neck. Her car keys were in her hand. Her phone displayed text messages from her 11-year-old daughter confirming dismissal time. No crime, no suspicious behavior, no vehicle theft, just a cardiologist waiting to pick up her child after completing afternoon rounds at the hospital. But Officer Rawlings saw her through a filter so distorted by assumptions that black women in affluent neighborhoods must be criminals that he could not process a physician as a legitimate parent waiting at her daughter's school. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Lincoln Park Elementary School sits on Webster Avenue in one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods, a historic brick building serving children from some of the city's most affluent families. The school drop-off and pickup area features a semicircular drive, designated parent waiting zones, and strict traffic management protocols. During dismissal, the sidewalk fills with parents arriving in luxury vehicles, nannies pushing expensive strollers, and caregivers checking their phones while waiting for children to emerge from the building. It was 3:47 on a Thursday afternoon in October. Temperature had dropped to 53 degrees as autumn settled into the city. The dismissal bell would ring in 13 minutes. The sidewalk was already crowded with waiting parents. Most were white, dressed in athleisure wear or business casual, scattered along the designated pickup zone. Some chatted with each other. Others scrolled through their phones. A few checked watches, calculating whether they could run errands before evening activities began. Dr. Nicole Harper stood near the main entrance, checking text messages from her daughter. She wore black dress pants, a charcoal gray blazer over a burgundy blouse, and comfortable flats that she kept in her office for the walk between hospital buildings. Her Northwestern Medicine identification badge hung clearly visible on her lanyard, displaying her photograph, name, title, and department. Her medical bag sat at her feet. Her car, a pearl-white BMW X5, was parked legally in a marked space 30 feet away. Everything was routine, familiar, unremarkable. She had picked up her daughter from this school 3 times a week for 2 years, coordinating with her husband who handled the other days. She knew many of the other parents by sight, exchanged pleasantries with teachers, contributed to the Parent Association fundraisers. She belonged here as much as anyone else waiting on that sidewalk, the kind of Thursday afternoon where nothing dramatic should happen. Then she noticed the Chicago police cruiser pulling up to the curb, parking directly in front of the school in a no-parking zone. She noticed because it was unusual, not alarming. Police occasionally visited the school for safety presentations or traffic enforcement. She watched as an officer stepped out, his eyes scanning the crowd of waiting parents. And then those eyes locked on her. She felt the weight of his stare before she understood what it meant. He was walking directly toward her, his hand moving to his service weapon, his expression set in what she would later recognize as presumed guilt meeting predetermined arrest. Dr. Nicole Harper had been an interventional cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital for 13 years. 13 years performing cardiac catheterizations, angioplasties, stent placements, and complex procedures that required precision most people could not comprehend. She specialized in treating acute coronary syndrome, performing emergency interventions when patients arrived at the hospital with heart attacks in progress. She had performed over 4,000 procedures, mentored dozens of cardiology fellows, and published research in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology on outcomes in high-risk patients. Her survival rates exceeded national benchmarks. Her patient satisfaction scores ranked in the 99th percentile. Her colleagues called her the cardiologist they would choose for their own families. Her patients called her the doctor who saved their lives. She served as the director of the Cardiac Catheterization Laboratory, overseeing a team of interventional cardiologists, nurses, and technicians who performed over 3,000 procedures annually. She held faculty appointments at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine, teaching medical students and residents about cardiovascular disease and interventional techniques. She served on hospital committees addressing quality improvement, patient safety, and healthcare equity. She had received the hospital's Excellence in Clinical Care Award 4 times. Harper had graduated summa cum laude from Howard University with a degree in biology, then earned her medical degree from Harvard Medical School, where she had been elected to the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Society and graduated in the top 5% of her class. She had completed her internal medicine residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, consistently receiving top evaluations from attending physicians and chief residents. She had completed her cardiology fellowship at Johns Hopkins Hospital, one of the most competitive programs in the nation, then pursued additional subspecialty training in interventional cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic. She was board certified in internal medicine, cardiovascular disease, and interventional cardiology. She held advanced certifications in complex coronary interventions and structural heart disease. In 2021, she had been named one of Chicago Magazine's top doctors. In 2023, she had received the American Heart Association's Distinguished Physician Award for contributions to cardiovascular medicine. At 42 years old, Nicole Harper was exactly where she had worked to be. She had married her college sweetheart, Marcus Harper, a corporate attorney with a downtown law firm, 18 years earlier. They had one daughter, 11-year-old Maya, who excelled in mathematics and played violin in the school orchestra. They lived in a renovated brownstone in Lincoln Park that they had purchased 9 years earlier, a home they had carefully chosen for its proximity to excellent schools and safe neighborhoods. Harper woke at 5:15 every morning for a workout before hospital rounds. She spent weekends at Maya's soccer games and orchestra concerts. She volunteered with programs encouraging young women of color to pursue careers in medicine. She represented achievement, stability, and success earned through decades of dedication. That Thursday, Harper had performed 3 emergency cardiac catheterizations between 7 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. She had treated a 63-year-old man experiencing an acute myocardial infarction, successfully opening a blocked artery and placing 2 stents. She had stabilized a 71-year-old woman with unstable angina. She had performed a diagnostic procedure on a 58-year-old patient with chest pain. She had completed her afternoon rounds, checked on post-procedure patients, returned phone calls to referring physicians, and left the hospital at 3:30 to pick up her daughter from school. She wore her work clothes, professional attire that projected competence and authority in the hospital, but apparently made her look suspicious to Officer Rawlings. Her Northwestern Medicine identification badge hung clearly visible around her neck, displaying her photograph and credentials. Her medical bag contained her stethoscope, tablet for reviewing patient records, and the protein bar she had not had time to eat for lunch. She looked like what she was, a physician who had just completed a demanding day of life-saving procedures and was now fulfilling her role as a mother. She had committed no crime. She had violated no law. She had done nothing to attract police attention except exist as a black woman in an affluent white neighborhood. But to Officer Kevin Rawlings, her presence was suspicious enough to justify an arrest. But to Officer Rawlings, any black woman in dark clothing fit the description of a suspect he had never actually seen, and he had decided that fitting a vague description was sufficient to justify an arrest without investigation, without questions, without verification. Kevin Rawlings was 37 years old. He had been a patrol officer with the Chicago Police Department for 9 years. He was assertive in his enforcement approach, confident in his instincts, and convinced that his judgment about suspicious behavior was rarely wrong. His supervisors described him as proactive but occasionally rushed in his decision-making. His training evaluations noted recurring issues with over-reliance on incomplete information and insufficient investigation before initiating enforcement actions. In 9 years, Rawlings had compiled a record that should have prompted multiple supervisory interventions and comprehensive retraining. 13 complaints. 13. 10 of them involved allegations of racial profiling, unlawful arrest, excessive force, or stops based on vague physical descriptions that amounted to racial characteristics. 4 had been sustained, resulting in written reprimands, mandatory training, and 1 5-day suspension without pay. The other 9 had been closed with findings of policy compliance, or not sustained despite witness statements and pattern documentation contradicting those conclusions. Rawlings had a clear and extensively documented pattern. He arrested people of color based on vague suspect descriptions that could apply to thousands of individuals, rarely conducting even basic verification before making arrests. A Latino man was arrested as a robbery suspect because he wore a red jacket, the only descriptor from the victim, despite being 3 inches shorter and 40 pounds heavier than the actual suspect. A black teenager was arrested for burglary because he was walking in a neighborhood where a break-in had occurred, despite having identification showing he lived 2 blocks away. An Asian woman was arrested for shoplifting based on a description of Asian female in jeans, despite store video later showing the actual suspect looked nothing like her. Each complaint documented the same failures: inadequate investigation, over-reliance on race as an identifying characteristic, rush to arrest without verification, and escalation to force when subjects questioned the legal basis for detention. The pattern was extensively documented in his personnel file. The Chicago Office of Police Accountability had flagged his arrest patterns multiple times. Community organizations had filed formal complaints identifying Rawlings by name. Internal audits had shown his arrest to dismissal rate exceeded department averages by 43%, indicating he was arresting people who had committed no crimes at rates far higher than other officers. But somehow Rawlings remained on patrol, his complaint file growing while his arrest statistics made him appear productive to supervisors who prioritized numbers over constitutional compliance. That afternoon, Rawlings had received a dispatch call at 3:32 reporting a suspected car thief in the Lincoln Park area. The description provided by dispatch was minimal and vague. Black female, approximately 5 feet 6 inches, wearing dark clothing, seen near vehicles on Webster Avenue. No specific vehicle identified as stolen. No specific location beyond a 2-block radius. No facial description, no age range beyond adult, no distinguishing features. The kind of description that could match thousands of women in Chicago on any given day. A description so vague that it provided no actual identifying information beyond race and gender. Rawlings did not request clarification on the description. He did not ask dispatch for additional details. He did not question whether a description consisting solely of race, gender, approximate height, and clothing color provided sufficient specificity to justify stopping anyone. He simply drove toward Webster Avenue looking for any black woman in dark clothing, convinced that his instinct would identify the right person when he saw her. Rawlings arrived at Lincoln Park Elementary at 3:46. He scanned the crowd of waiting parents and immediately focused on Dr. Harper. She was the only black woman on that sidewalk. She wore dark clothing. She matched the height range. In Rawlings's mind, that constituted reasonable suspicion. He did not consider that she was standing in a parent pickup zone outside an elementary school. He did not notice her hospital identification badge. He did not observe that she was checking her phone like every other waiting parent. He did not ask himself why a car thief would be standing openly on a crowded sidewalk surrounded by witnesses. He saw a black woman in dark clothing and decided she was the suspect. He exited his vehicle and walked directly toward her, his hand moving to his service weapon as he approached. Nicole Harper was replying to a text from her daughter when she became aware of someone approaching rapidly. She looked up and saw a Chicago police officer walking directly toward her, his expression aggressive, his hand near his weapon. Her first thought was concern that something had happened at the school. Her second thought was confusion about why he was approaching her specifically. Her third thought, the one that made her stomach drop, was recognition of what was actually happening. "Ma'am, turn around and put your hands behind your back." Harper blinked, processing the command, searching for an explanation that made sense. "Excuse me, officer, what is this about? Why are you speaking to me?" Rawlings stepped closer, his voice rising slightly. "You match the description of a suspect. You're under arrest. Turn around now." Harper felt her heart rate accelerating, her physician training kicking in even as fear and confusion flooded through her. "Match what description? I'm standing here waiting for my daughter. She attends this school. I am a parent." "What suspect are you referring to?" Harper lifted her hospital identification badge, holding it clearly visible so Rawlings could read her name, photograph, and title. "Officer, I am Dr. Nicole Harper. I'm a cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. This is my hospital identification. I live 2 blocks from here. I am picking up my daughter from school. You are making a mistake." Rawlings glanced at the badge briefly, his expression unchanging, dismissive. "I don't care who you say you are. You fit the description. Hands behind your back." Now Harper's voice remained controlled but gained urgency. "What description? Can you please tell me what crime you believe I have committed? What specific facts give you reasonable suspicion to arrest me? I'm a physician standing outside my daughter's school. This is my neighborhood." The interaction was attracting attention. Other parents stopped their conversations and turned to watch. Several pulled out their phones and began recording. A mother Harper recognized from school events called out, "That's Dr. Harper. She's Maya's mom." "What are you doing?" Another voice joined. "She's a doctor at Northwestern. She picks up her daughter here all the time." This is where vague descriptions become weapons. Officer Rawlings had received a dispatch call describing a suspect as black female in dark clothing. That description could match millions of women. It provided no actual identifying information. It was not reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. It was a demographic category that Rawlings had decided was sufficient to justify arresting the first black woman he saw. Every constitutional protection, every requirement of reasonable suspicion, every standard for legitimate law enforcement was irrelevant once Rawlings decided that being black and female in the approximate location of a reported crime constituted grounds for arrest. Harper knew she faced an impossible situation. She could continue asserting her rights and risk violence, or she could comply with an unlawful arrest and seek legal remedy afterward. She chose to assert her rights clearly for the witnesses recording the interaction. "Officer, I am not resisting arrest. I am asking you to articulate reasonable suspicion for this detention. Under Terry v. Ohio, you must have specific articulable facts suggesting criminal activity. What facts do you have beyond my race? What crime do you suspect me of committing?" "I have shown you my identification. Multiple witnesses have confirmed I am a parent at this school. You have no legal basis to arrest me." Rawlings's face flushed red at the legal citation. His voice rose sharply. "You're resisting arrest. Turn around now or I will use force." Harper held up both hands, making her compliance visible to all witnesses. "I am complying under protest. I am not resisting. Everyone here is witnessing this unlawful arrest. I am Dr. Nicole Harper, interventional cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I am being arrested while waiting to pick up my daughter from school. This officer has provided no explanation for this arrest beyond stating that I match a vague description." Rawlings grabbed Harper's arm and spun her around roughly. She felt the force of his grip, the unnecessary aggression in the movement. He pulled her arms behind her back and snapped handcuffs on, tightening them more than necessary. Harper winced but said nothing that could be interpreted as resistance. "You are under arrest for matching the description of a suspect and for resisting an officer. I have not resisted. Everyone here has seen me comply. On what basis are you arresting me? What crime am I suspected of committing?" Rawlings pushed her toward his patrol car. As they moved, Harper's foot caught on uneven pavement. She stumbled. Rawlings, instead of steadying her, used a takedown maneuver, forcing her to the ground. Harper's face hit the concrete sidewalk. She felt immediate sharp pain in her cheekbone and jaw. Blood began flowing from a cut above her eyebrow. Parents screamed. Children watching from school windows started crying. Multiple people were recording. A man ran forward. "Stop, she's not resisting. You just assaulted her." Rawlings pulled Harper to her feet roughly, blood now visible on her face, her blazer torn at the shoulder. He walked her to his patrol car and pushed her into the back seat. Inside the school, Maya Harper had seen everything through the window. She was screaming for her mother, held back by teachers. The crowd of parents surrounded the patrol car. Someone was calling 911 to report excessive force. Another person was calling Northwestern Memorial Hospital to notify them that one of their physicians had been arrested. A parent was calling Marcus Harper to tell him his wife had just been attacked by police outside their daughter's school. Sergeant Patricia Gonzalez arrived within 9 minutes, responding to multiple 911 calls from witnesses reporting excessive force and an unjustified arrest. She was a 21-year veteran who had supervised hundreds of arrests and understood the constitutional standards that governed them. She pulled into the school zone and immediately assessed the scene. A crowd of angry parents surrounding a patrol car, children visible in school windows crying, multiple people recording video, and a woman in the back of the patrol car with visible facial injuries and blood on her clothing. Rawlings, what is the basis for this arrest? Rawlings stepped forward, confident in his actions. Sergeant, I responded to a call about a suspected car thief. Black female, dark clothing. This subject matched the description. She was in the area. She refused to cooperate when I attempted to verify her identity. Gonzalez walked to the patrol car and looked at Harper through the window. She saw the hospital identification badge still hanging around Harper's neck, clearly visible. She saw the professional attire. She saw the facial injuries. She opened the door. Ma'am, I am Sergeant Gonzalez. Can you tell me what happened? Harper, still shaking from shock and pain, spoke clearly despite the blood on her face. Sergeant, my name is Dr. Nicole Harper. I'm an interventional cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I was standing outside this school waiting to pick up my 11-year-old daughter who is a student here. Officer Rawlings approached me and stated that I matched the description of a suspect. I asked what crime I was suspected of committing. I showed him my hospital identification. Multiple parents confirmed my identity. I cited Terry v. Ohio and asked for articulable facts supporting reasonable suspicion. He arrested me, handcuffed me, and when I stumbled on uneven pavement, he executed a takedown maneuver that resulted in my face hitting concrete. I complied with every command. I did not resist. Dozens of witnesses recorded the entire interaction. My daughter watched from a school window as I was assaulted. I am an American citizen who was violently arrested for waiting outside my daughter's school while being black. Gonzalez examined the hospital badge closely. She called Northwestern Memorial Hospital directly and was connected to the cardiology department within minutes. The department coordinator confirmed Dr. Harper's identity, position, and schedule. Sergeant, is Dr. Harper okay? She had 3 procedures this morning. She left here at 3:30 to pick up her daughter. What happened? Gonzalez ended the call and turned to Rawlings, her expression hardening to something cold and dangerous. You arrested an interventional cardiologist outside her daughter's school based on a vague description consisting solely of race and gender. You ignored her hospital identification. You disregarded multiple witnesses confirming her identity. You used a takedown maneuver on a compliant subject who had committed no crime, resulting in facial injuries that will require medical treatment. Badge and weapon, you are suspended immediately pending termination proceedings. Rawlings's voice rose defensively. Sergeant, she matched the description, black female, dark clothing. She was in the area where the call came in. That description matches thousands of women. It is not reasonable suspicion. It is racial profiling. You arrested a physician in front of her daughter without conducting even minimal investigation. Give me your badge right now. Rawlings handed over his badge and weapon with shaking hands, the reality of what he had done beginning to register. Gonzalez personally removed the handcuffs from Harper's wrists and helped her out of the patrol car. She immediately called for paramedics to treat Harper's injuries. Dr. Harper, on behalf of the Chicago Police Department, I sincerely apologize. This arrest was unlawful. Officer Rawlings had no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause, and no justification for using force against you. I am ensuring that you receive immediate medical treatment and that every aspect of this incident is documented for investigation. You are free to go. I will personally drive you and your daughter home. Harper's response was measured but unyielding through her pain. Sergeant, your apology does not undo what just happened. My daughter just watched her mother be violently arrested and thrown to the ground. I have facial injuries that will require treatment. I was handcuffed in front of dozens of parents and children. I was assaulted for the crime of being a black woman outside a school in my own neighborhood. Officer Rawlings has 13 complaints, 10 involving racial profiling, 4 sustained, and your department left him on patrol to do this to me. I will be pursuing every legal remedy available. Within 2 hours, the videos had exploded across social media and national news networks. Multiple parents had recorded the entire interaction from different angles. Rawlings demanding Harper's arrest. Harper showing her hospital badge and explaining she was picking up her daughter. Witnesses confirming her identity, Rawlings executing the takedown, Harper's face hitting concrete, blood visible on her face, children crying in school windows. The footage showed a renowned cardiologist being violently arrested in front of her traumatized daughter. The outrage was immediate, overwhelming, and sustained. Northwestern Memorial Hospital issued a statement condemning the arrest and supporting Dr. Harper. The American College of Cardiology released a statement expressing concern about racial profiling of physicians. The Chicago Medical Society demanded accountability. The Illinois Black Physicians Association called for federal investigation. The Chicago City Council convened emergency hearings. Parent organizations at Lincoln Park Elementary rallied around Harper. The story dominated national news for 3 consecutive days. Kevin Rawlings's career collapsed within 36 hours. The Chicago Police Department placed him on unpaid administrative leave, launched parallel investigations through Internal Affairs and the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, and issued a public statement acknowledging that the arrest violated constitutional standards and department policy. Rawlings's 13-complaint history became national news. Media outlets published extensive analysis of his pattern of racial profiling, the sustained complaints, the department's failure to remove him from patrol despite documented bias. Rawlings released no statement. His attorney issued a brief comment claiming Rawlings acted on information available at the time. The statement was met with universal condemnation and immediate contradiction by constitutional law experts and law enforcement professionals, who explained that the description provided did not constitute reasonable suspicion. Dr. Harper retained one of Chicago's most prominent civil rights law firms within 48 hours. The lawsuit, filed 7 weeks later, named Officer Kevin Rawlings personally, Sergeant Patricia Gonzalez for supervisory failure, the Chicago Police Department, and the City of Chicago. The claims were comprehensive and devastating. Unlawful arrest without reasonable suspicion or probable cause in violation of the Fourth Amendment, false imprisonment without legal justification, excessive force through unnecessary takedown maneuver, assault and battery through use of force on compliant subject, racial profiling and discrimination in violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, intentional infliction of emotional distress on both Harper and her daughter, violation of Illinois civil rights statutes, failure to train officers on reasonable suspicion standards and racial profiling prohibitions, failure to supervise officers with documented patterns of discriminatory arrests, and failure to discipline officers despite 13 complaints documenting constitutional violations over 9 years. The complaint included Rawlings's complete disciplinary record with analysis of his arrest patterns, expert declarations from constitutional law scholars and law enforcement experts, statistical analysis showing his disproportionate arrest rates of people of color based on vague descriptions, psychological evaluations of both Harper and her daughter documenting trauma and ongoing anxiety, medical records documenting Harper's facial injuries requiring sutures and resulting in permanent scarring, and statements from 43 witnesses including parents, teachers, and school administrators who observed the arrest. The city's attorneys reviewed the evidence and reached an immediate conclusion. The video evidence was devastating and had been viewed millions of times. The victim was a prominent physician with impeccable credentials. The injuries were documented and visible. The officer's complaint history was disqualifying. The description that allegedly justified the arrest was laughably vague. The use of force against a compliant subject was indefensible. Proceeding to trial would result in a jury verdict potentially exceeding $25 million. Chicago settled 18 months later, paying $13,800,000 to Dr. Nicole Harper, one of the largest excessive force settlements in Chicago history. Additional terms required the Chicago Police Department to implement comprehensive reforms. Prohibition on arrests based solely on race and gender descriptions without additional identifying information. Mandatory supervisory approval before any arrest based on matching suspect descriptions. Automatic investigation of any arrest resulting in charges being dismissed. Removal from patrol duties for any officer with 3 sustained complaints involving racial profiling. Body camera review for 100% of arrests. Quarterly pattern analysis of all officers' arrests with intervention for racial disparities, and community oversight with authority to review and recommend discipline for constitutional violations. Officer Kevin Rawlings was terminated 16 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was comprehensive, unequivocal, and final. Officer Rawlings arrested a prominent physician outside her daughter's school based solely on her race and gender. He ignored her hospital identification, disregarded multiple witnesses confirming her identity, and used a takedown maneuver on a compliant subject, causing facial injuries. His description of the suspect, consisting only of race, gender, approximate height, and clothing color, did not constitute reasonable suspicion. Despite 13 complaints over 9 years, 10 involving racial profiling and unlawful arrests, 4 of which were sustained, Officer Rawlings continued to arrest people of color based on vague descriptions that amounted to racial profiling. His actions violated the Fourth Amendment, department policy, and the public trust. His employment is terminated immediately. His name will be entered into the National Decertification Index. Rawlings's law enforcement career ended at 37 years old. He did not appeal. He relocated to Indiana within 5 months and has not been employed in law enforcement since. Dr. Nicole Harper testified before the Chicago City Council during hearings on police accountability and racial profiling. Her testimony was powerful in its clinical precision and devastating in its emotional truth. My name is Dr. Nicole Harper. I am an interventional cardiologist at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I have practiced medicine for 13 years. I graduated summa cum laude from Howard University. I earned my medical degree from Harvard Medical School. I completed my residency at Massachusetts General Hospital and my fellowship at Johns Hopkins. I am board certified in internal medicine, cardiovascular disease, and interventional cardiology. I perform emergency procedures on patients experiencing heart attacks. I have saved hundreds of lives. She paused, touching the small scar above her eyebrow that remained from the arrest. And on October 12th, I was violently arrested outside my daughter's elementary school because Officer Kevin Rawlings saw a black woman in dark clothing and decided that was sufficient reason to handcuff me, throw me to the ground, and bloody my face on a concrete sidewalk. The description he was working from consisted of 4 pieces of information. Black, female, approximately 5 feet 6 inches, dark clothing. That description matches millions of women. It matched me only because I am black and I was wearing a blazer and dress pants. Not because I was stealing cars, not because I was committing any crime, because I was existing in a neighborhood where Officer Rawlings apparently believes black women do not belong. Her voice strengthened with controlled fury. I showed him my hospital identification. I explained I was picking up my daughter. Multiple parents confirmed I was Maya Harper's mother. None of it mattered because Officer Rawlings had already decided I was guilty. 13 complaints over 9 years. 10 involving racial profiling and wrongful arrests based on vague descriptions. 4 sustained. And Officer Rawlings remained on patrol, arresting black people, Latino people, Asian people, anyone whose race matched a description, never conducting actual investigation, never asking basic questions, never considering that race is not reasonable suspicion. She looked directly at each council member. My 11-year-old daughter watched from a school window as her mother was thrown to the ground. She saw my face hit concrete. She saw blood on my clothing. She had nightmares for months. She is now in therapy, learning to process the trauma of watching her mother be violently arrested for no reason. The city paid me $13,800,000. That is significant, but it does not undo my daughter's trauma. It does not remove the scar on my face. It does not restore the sense of safety I felt in my own neighborhood before I learned that being a cardiologist, a mother, a homeowner, a taxpayer, none of it protects you when an officer sees only your race. Her voice carried across the silent chamber. If this can happen to me, an interventional cardiologist at one of the nation's top hospitals, what happens to the black woman working retail who does not have my resources? What happens to the single mother without a law degree who cannot cite Terry v. Ohio when an officer demands compliance? If my credentials, my identification, my witnesses, none of it was enough to prevent my violent arrest, what protection does anyone else have? This was not simply about one wrongful arrest on one Thursday afternoon. This was about a police department that allowed Kevin Rawlings to accumulate 13 complaints over 9 years without removing him from duties that required constitutional competence and racial awareness. This was about a system that documented pattern after pattern of racial profiling, but treated each complaint as an isolated training failure rather than cumulative evidence of an officer fundamentally unsuited for law enforcement. Rawlings's personnel file told a story supervisors documented but failed to act upon. 13 complaints over 9 years. 10 involving racial profiling, unlawful arrest, or stops based on vague descriptions. 4 sustained with consequences limited to reprimands and brief suspension. 9 closed despite witness statements and video evidence. The pattern was undeniable and extensively documented. Rawlings arrested people of color at rates 53% higher than white residents in his patrol zone. His arrest-to-dismissal rate was 43% above department average, meaning nearly half the people he arrested had committed no crimes. Every statistical analysis showed the same problem. Every complaint documented the same failure to conduct investigation before arrest, but the system aggregated no data, connected no patterns, acknowledged nothing beyond isolated incidents requiring more training that changed nothing. Kevin Rawlings's law enforcement career is over. That represents justice. The city paid $13,800,000. That represents accountability. Comprehensive reforms were mandated requiring supervisory approval and pattern analysis. Those represent systemic change, but money and policy reforms do not remove the scar above Dr. Harper's eyebrow. They do not erase her daughter's nightmares. They do not restore the security that should exist when a physician waits outside her daughter's school in her own neighborhood. The real question is whether these reforms will be enforced consistently or whether they will erode when public attention shifts to other issues. Do police departments finally remove officers after 3 sustained racial profiling complaints instead of 13 total complaints? Do supervisors finally intervene when arrest patterns show racial disparities at complaint 5? Do dispatch protocols finally prohibit arrests based solely on race and gender without additional identifying characteristics? Do we finally acknowledge that black female in dark clothing is not a suspect description, but a demographic category? That arresting the first person who matches only race and gender is not police work, but racial harassment? That physician credentials, hospital identification, and witness confirmation should matter more than an officer's assumption that black women in affluent neighborhoods must be criminals. Because if we fail to fix the systems that kept Rawlings on patrol despite 13 complaints, if we fail to address the training that teaches officers to trust racial instinct over constitutional standards, then we are simply waiting for the next Kevin Rawlings, the next assaulted physician, the next traumatized child watching their parent be violently arrested for existing while black. Comment if you believe this should be mandatory federal policy. Arrests based on suspect descriptions consisting primarily or solely of race and gender without additional specific identifying characteristics are prohibited and result in automatic termination and civil liability for the arresting officer. And if you believe these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability begins with exposure and change, requires sustained pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We are not stopping. We will continue exposing these patterns. We will continue demanding better. We will continue fighting for the cardiologists, the mothers, the children who deserve to exist in their own neighborhoods without being violently arrested by officers who see race instead of humanity. This is not simply about one officer or one physician. This is about all of us and the society we are building with every arrest, every lawsuit, every settlement that cannot restore what was taken. Because until a black cardiologist can wait outside her daughter's school without being thrown to the ground, until professional credentials protect all Americans equally regardless of color, until being black female in dark clothing is understood as everyday existence rather than criminal suspicion, we have not fulfilled the constitutional promise of equal protection under law. And until we fulfill that promise, settlements will continue documenting violations that money cannot remedy, videos will continue showing assaults that should never occur, and children will continue watching their parents be violently arrested for the supposed crime of existing in public space while black.